want to do this?
Action.
Perfect. Let's do it. Megan, thanks for coming and doing this.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Well, I want to go over a couple things with you. I know that you do business and mindset coaching, so I kind of want to dive into that process with you, but can you real quick give everybody a rundown of who you are, what you do, and then we can kind of get into how you got into this and we can go from there. Does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. Loaded question. So obviously my name's Megan. I am a business and mindset coach for new entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, which I like to call wantrepreneurs, or early stage entrepreneurs who are less than a year into their business. And so my path to get into all this is kind of untraditional, I guess. I moved down to Florida 8 years ago to go to FGCU, get my business degree, do what everybody tells you you're supposed to do, right? Go to school, get your degree, go to corporate, retire, die, the rest.
I understand. I took a similar path, so I get it.
So I did exactly that. I graduated from FGCU with my business degree, and then I went right into corporate and worked my way up the corporate ladder, all these promotions, all these raises, and all of that on paper seemed amazing. I mean, everyone, if you look at a piece of paper with my resume, it's like, oh my God, Megan's living her best life. It looked like that, but I really wasn't. I just started to feel like, why am I having all these great things happen and they're not feeling as good as they should?
Sure.
And long story short, it just came down to the fact that I wasn't doing what I was really supposed to be doing. I wasn't fulfilled. So I did some of my own mindset work, and still that wasn't it wasn't curing everything, right? Because I was still waking up and I was going to a job that didn't make me feel good. I wasn't excited to get up in the morning. I was dreading every minute. I was so unbelievably burnt out.
Sure.
And so then, a lot of things happened in between, but then COVID happens and like a psycho, I leave my job in the middle of a pandemic and start my own business. So that's kind of where I started. I originally started as a mindset coach, very broad. And in doing that, the first few clients that I had, every single one of them had mentioned, hey, Meg, I really want to start my own business, or I've had this business idea for years, or I'm too scared to do it and I don't know how. And I'm like, well, boom, there's where, I need to go with this, is mindset and business for new entrepreneurs, because there's so many missing pieces and so many people want all these things and they just don't go for it. So that's how I became a business and mindset coach for entrepreneurs. And that was like a 2-year span in 2 minutes. So that's where I am.
All right, cool. That was a short version of a long story.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, cool. So just curious, at what point when you were doing this mindset coaching, how long into it did you realize that you needed to make a shift, and what were, aside from just talking to people, or maybe that was it, what were the main things that got the gears turning of oh, I got to go this direction?
Yeah, I'd say it was about 3 months. Less than 3 months is when I started to pivot, which is traditionally shorter than usual when most people pivot. But it wasn't a full pivot, because it was more of I'm adding on. I'm not just doing mindset. I'm getting very specific in who I'm helping with mindset and adding on the business component. And it was really because I realized, as an entrepreneur myself and talking with people and seeing other people in my network and other people in the industry, so many people skip the mindset piece, right? They go right into business plan, and they go right into marketing, and they go right into social media, and they go right into money, which is all great. You obviously need all those things, but they're skipping the mindset piece. And that's sometimes my biased opinion, is the most important part.
Sure.
And
it's the foundation.
Exactly. You look at all the statistics of all these businesses that fail in the first year or the first 2 years, and it's not because of the lack of support or the lack of marketing or the lack of money. It's because of the mindset. They didn't have the right entrepreneur mindset to get them through everything that comes with starting a business and growing a business, because, as you know, it's an absolute roller coaster.
What are some of the main things that you see new entrepreneurs get hung up on? Because I get hung up on tons of shit all the time, and even just yesterday, I look at my brother, I'm like, does it make sense what I'm doing? Would anybody really pay for this? Am I charging way too much? He's like, no. We at the old company used to spend $5,000 for a print ad. That was in a magazine. And that's still what they charge. Some people charge way more than that. It's you're given a full service, all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. And it's interactive, live. No, you're fine. I was like, okay. But before I ask that question, I'm like, fuck, should I just give this up? Like, you know what I mean? So what are the main things that you see people go through when they're starting businesses? Like, what are the main things that like get people like failing, or that people get hung up on?
Fear.
Yeah.
Number one is always going to be fear, and fear of a lot of different things. I mean, fear, like you said, fear of failure, fear of what people will think, fear of success is a big one too. People don't talk about the fear of success, but the fear of success is real.
Very real.
I mean, the fears that just like they're debilitating. I mean, I know when I first started, it was fear of losing security, fear of losing a steady paycheck, fear of losing benefits, fear of what my family will say, what my friends will think, fear of going out on a limb and doing all of this work just to end right back up in corporate, and fear of all these things. And that's why so many people get stuck in this like center area of like, I want a business to I have a business. The middle part is the fear. Yeah. And that's it's so strong because, I mean, your brain's a very powerful tool. And that's why, again, the mindset piece is so crucial, because you learn how to use that fear to fuel you forwards rather than hold you back. And I mean, at the end of the day, fear isn't going anywhere. I mean, fear is what makes us human, right? Fear protects us. It's our brain telling us like, don't touch a hot stove, don't run out of a moving car. Like, fear keeps us safe, but our brain is so connected to our comfort zone, and that's why a lot of people stay there, is because the fear is way too strong.
Yeah, I mean, and I just interviewed this lady named Darcy Eichenberg. She wrote a book. It's called Red Cape Rescue, and I just interviewed her last week. And this is what a lot of her book is about: is like, you have the way that you talk to yourself, the way that your brain will talk to you and send these signals to you, and just kind of keep you in fear. I've noticed that if you kind of can dive into that fear, like, that is where a lot of the growth comes from. Yep. So how do you get people to first even see that that's what's going on? Because it's not easy to see. It's easy to hear it, but it's hard to apply it to your own life, right? So how do you help people actually go in and see that they are even afraid, and then start figuring out what they're afraid of? Yeah,
fear is a big thing that I've worked on with every single one of my clients, because everybody has fear. And some are more strong than others. Some are fearful of different things. So it's a really tricky thing to work on, because everybody is brought up differently. Everybody has fears that come from different places, but we are actually only born with two fears: the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. So everything else that we're fearful up until this point is learned. So it's about unlearning. Whoa. Yeah, it's crazy. I know, I read that and I was like, huh? Every other fear you have is learned. So it's really about going in and unlearning them. And now how do we do that? Because we know the fear isn't going away. It's about starting to be so familiar, like almost like becoming best friends with your fear and actually talking about it, becoming familiar with it. Because like you said, people don't like to talk about it. No one talks about their fears. They like keep them all inside because it's not a normal thing to talk about. But if you can become so familiar with them, try to figure out where they're coming from, and then become so like comfortable with the worst case scenario, because those thoughts of the worst case scenario, that's what shoots us right back to where we started. And the thing is, like, you cannot be committed to your growth and your comfort zone, right? It's either you pick your goals or you pick your comfort zone. You can't have both. And that fear plays such a big role in that. So what I always tell people to do is, okay, think about the literally like the worst case scenario. So what's your biggest fear? What's the worst case scenario, right? And if that were to happen, what would you do? Yeah. And every single time someone says, oh, I would so be able to handle that, or I'd so be able to bounce back, I'm like, see, like, what you're actually scared of is not that scary. It's just about like talking about it and realizing it and having concrete ways. If for some reason the worst case scenario happens, which, I mean, 99% of our fears don't ever actually come true. Yeah. If the 1%, if it happens, you have tools and you have like ways. You already have a pre-planned, you've already been proactive. You know how to handle it. Yeah. You know how to bounce right back. So just like talking through that and like understanding that what you're fearful of isn't actually so like daunting and so scary, that's a good way to start like making those steps forward of like, okay, I can actually do this. Well, and that reminded me when you said like, oh, I'm afraid of like leaving the stability and will I end back up in corporate? It's like, you can use that as a way to actually move forward. That was one of the things that I thought of when I went out and started this, was like, okay, I'm scared shitless. I don't know what I'm going to do. I got to fucking figure this out, and I got to figure it out quick.
at the end of the day, I have this experience of working at this company, right? Like multiple companies. I've done a lot of things that most people that are 26, 27, 28 have never done and won't really do until they're maybe in their 30s. Right. I can always go back and find a job somewhere else. Like, so if I plan this out, right, and I at least like get the infrastructure in place and try to find a few customers and move this thing forward, and let's say it fails, like really the worst case is like I go get a job at that place, another place, and then that was where I was comfortable with like setting it, because I didn't want to stretch myself so thin that like I made my worst case scenario, well, I got to lose my house and my car, and I got to lose this, and like won't have money for this, or got to move back into my parents. Like I kind of wasn't willing to jump into something that would put my worst case scenario there. So like that helped a lot. That alleviated a lot of, I don't know, worry. At least it made it more bearable at the beginning. Yeah. Doesn't nullify it, and it comes back every day, but
it's never going to go away, but it's about what you do with it. And that's a big difference between an employee mindset and an entrepreneur mindset. Is an employee mindset's like, I'm fine where I am, like everything's good, I'm not like, I'm inside this little box. And then an entrepreneur mindset is like, I don't want to be in this box anymore. Yeah. I'm going to figure out how to get out of this box. And if for some reason that doesn't work out exactly how I plan, like I'm going to get creative. And that's like the difference, is an entrepreneur mindset is so creative. You will find ways. As an employee, you're so used to people problem solving for you, right? Everything is just like figured out for you. If you make a mistake, someone's going to cover it up. If you are messing up in something, someone's going to help you. Like entrepreneur, for the most part, you're on your own, buddy. Like you are by yourself. So like you have to get creative. And if this happens, what am I going to do? If this happens, what am I going to do? I mean, but the reality is, it was all these things that were hard before, and all these things that like you were fearful of in your past, you've gotten past them. Obviously, like you're where you are now. So like your track record shows that you're fully capable of it. Yeah. If something like pushed you back, you got back up on there. And like you just have to like look at like what you've done so far up to this point. Like you said, like I'm really good at this and I'm really good at this. Like you're telling yourself that, but do you actually believe that? Because that's what's going to push you forward. Is yes, you can say all you want, but if you actually like firmly believe that, that's what like pushes you forward and fuels you even when the fear comes in. Yeah,
agreed. I had a thought there. You were saying so with the employee to entrepreneur mindset, when did that switch happen for you when you started your business? Like how far into your business did you realize that the employee mindset is just not going to work?
Not going to cut it. Yeah, that's a great question, because they are night and day, black and white, totally different. I mean, my situation is a little bit different because I think I was bit by the entrepreneur bug like way back when I was like, I don't know, 12. Like ever since I was a kid, like you can ask my parents, I always wanted to have my own business. I always wanted to start my own bakery or have my own cupcake shop. And then I moved on and I wanted to do this. And I wanted to have my own wedding planning business. Like I've always just wanted to have my own business, but I've had all this entrepreneur energy and nowhere to put it because I've been kept in the corporate box and I've been kept in the employee box. So when I had the opportunity to get out of that box, my entrepreneur like energy was like, woohoo, like let's go. We've been like bottled up for so long. So for me, it took, I think, a lot less time than other people because one, I already had the entrepreneur energy, and two, I had done the mindset work prior to actually going full-time into business. I did that mindset work beforehand. Right? And that's like the key is I always say, like, if you're starting a business, start the mindset work first, because that's, like you said, it's the foundation. And I mean,
that's a great point. That's a great distinction. Now that you say that, that's what I did pretty much the year before I decided to leave was that work of like, and I did it through like reading the 4 agreements, doing this thing called the personal Credo journal, writing every day. Yep, it's huge. All this kind of stuff, listening to audiobooks, all that kind of stuff. And like by going through that process and staying consistent with that helped me open up those kind of I guess in the future they became entrepreneurial thoughts or tendencies, because I noticed that once I started the company, I was still thinking in the employee kind of way of like things will just kind of fall into place.
Yeah.
And after like legit maybe 3 days, I was like, this is not going to work at all. I'm going to be fucked if I stay doing the same stuff. I'm done. So like it was crazy how fast once I just made that jump, like it switched. But yeah, like you said, I don't know that it would have gone that smoothly on that front if I didn't do that work earlier.
And
do you think that that's why a lot of people fail? 100%. Is that so? That's what you're saying is why a lot of people will end up failing.
They skip that part, or they realize too late that like, oh crap, I should have worked on this, and then they're trying to like catch up on all this mindset stuff, and it's just like it's messy. And I think that's what's so frustrating for me. It's like when I started doing this mindset work, I'm like, this is such a freaking crime that nobody is teaching us this stuff, right? We're not learning this in school. We're not learning this in college. Nobody is like throwing mindset stuff at us. No one's telling us that at any point in any time we can control our mind instead of letting our mind control us. So like as soon as I got like dove into this stuff, I'm like, I gotta start screaming this from the rooftops. Like this is bullshit. Why didn't nobody tell me this? Like I'm 25 years old, nobody's told me this yet. Like come on guys. So that's why I got like so addicted to it, because I'm like, so many things are changing just with like small steps. It wasn't like I was doing some big, like I wasn't going to these personal development like events, and I wasn't
dancing.
It was small things, but small things lead to big changes. Like everything started to change for me, like my work, my relationship, my family dynamic, like just the way I was with myself. I mean, my workout routine, the way I would wake up in the morning, everything started changing. And obviously when all these things in your life start changing, your life just feels better. And I'm like, well, why aren't people doing this? Like people need to start doing mindset work, especially if you're building a business, because if you're building a business, I look at it like you're building a house, and the mindset is the floor. So like, would you ever build a house without putting the floors in? I mean, I hope not, because that'd be really messy. You'd be walking around in dirt every day. So if you're going to build a business, put the floors in, and then the walls is the marketing and the social media and the business plan, all that. Like you need all those parts, but you would never skip the flooring when you're building a house. So why are you skipping your mindset work? You're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And okay, that makes sense. So how did you come to this? Is it just by working, like doing it yourself, and you just like epiphany, or what?
I mean, a lot of different ways. Obviously, my own work that I've done, all the work that I've done with other people, the coaching that I've received. I mean, I've had amazing coaches myself. Just in doing the work, you learn a lot. But then when you're helping others do the work, you learn so much more.
That's true.
Because you realize that so many people need this. And so many people are skipping it. And it's such a crucial part. I mean, entrepreneurship is a roller coaster, and is mindset the fix? No, absolutely not. It's not the end all be all, but it does make those really hard days feel less hard. It does make those really, really bad days not feel as bad, because you're able to bounce back, and you're going into it with the understanding that there's going to be hard days, and there's going to be roadblocks, and there's going to be obstacles, but I know that that's temporary, and I know that it's just going to make me a better business owner in the end.
Yeah. What do you feel like, what physical things do you feel like help with the mindset side? So like the reason why I asked this is like, I stopped drinking coffee a couple months ago. You said you did like
cannot do that
2-month stint without it.
Tried and never again.
So I did it last year, and for maybe like a month, maybe a little less than a month. And then now I'm like at about maybe a little longer, but 2 months or so without drinking coffee. I got some like matcha in here, but what I noticed with drinking coffee and like that kind of stuff was I would have this like kind of like anxiety a bit, where I was like, you'd have this burst of energy, and then you look at the amount of emails that you have, and then it's like, oh, I'm trying to get my LinkedIn built out, and then I'm trying to build out the Instagram to promote the show, and then I'm also trying to get customers, and then I also want to make sure I take care of like my current customers, and then you have all these things, and then it's kind of a pile up. So what I have trouble with is like the daunting nature of things, and I was noticing that like if I was kept drinking coffee, I was letting that anxiety around like the dauntingness of all my tasks like build up and kind of prevent me from doing stuff, even though I've done all this mindset work and things like that. So that's kind of why I got away from it. And I started drinking this stuff called Magic Mind. It's got like matcha and ashwagandha and all this stuff. And that it's actually helped like just alleviate some of that. The guy calls it like preventative anxiety. And then you can kind of just like go into things a little less amped than I did with coffee, but like just kind of flows a little bit more. So I guess my question is like, what are some of the things that you've noticed about like getting your body in shape or doing certain things? Like what is the most helpful physically that you've noticed for getting your attitude right, your mindset right? Or do you look at it differently?
No, 100%. The main thing I'm thinking of when you're saying that is mornings. The way you spend your mornings is the way you're going to spend your day. So I am very, like, one of the first things that I work with my clients on is how do you spend your morning? So, like, when you wake up, how do you spend your morning? Do you just roll right out of bed and go right to work? Like, what's it look like?
I usually get up, and it's been a little different the past 2 weeks.
Before the baby came.
I'm still trying. I'm like kind of getting some rhythm now, but like wake up, make like basically like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That's the equivalent of it. And then go out and I'll like write a little bit in my backyard, or I like sometimes read, and then from there it's like either head into the office if I got something to do early, or I'll work on stuff at home, but like I try to start it off with that and like wake up, I don't know, somewhere around 7:00.
Yeah, that's great. But what you'll find is people, when they're first starting their business, they're like waking up, they're like, oh, I have so many things to do. I'm just going to get right to work. And like, stop doing that, please. Yeah. Like I am so big on morning routines because the way you start your day literally impacts the rest of the day. So if you start your day all rushed and chaotic, the rest of your day is going to feel rushed and chaotic. But if you're starting your day like intentional, the rest of your day is going to be so much more incredible and so much more productive and so much more like you're just going to feel good at the end of the day. So I always say like your morning should include 4 things. 1, movement. 2, mindfulness. 3, education. And 4, like a feel-good thing. So for example...
So can you dive into these?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So movement could be, I'm not saying... The problem with morning routines, before I get into those 4, the problem with morning routines is that social media makes it seem like it has to be some big extravagant event. Like all these girls on social media, like go get your green juice and then run 5 miles in your Lululemon pants and then come back and go run 5 more miles and then you're ready for your day. I'm like, that's not a morning routine. Like that's not reasonable and that's not realistic. Like nobody's going to do that.
No.
So like they've given a bad name to morning routines, but like a morning routine could be 15 minutes or it could be 2 hours. Like it's really, the base is that your morning should be about you, because once your day starts, you have no idea what's going to happen. Like chaos could happen. The house could burn down. Like work could be crazy. That part you can't control. The one part of your day that is solely about you is your morning, and you have control over that. So it's about optimizing on that, and it's about getting the most out of it in a way that feels good for you. It shouldn't be what everybody else is doing. So the reason I break it down to those 4 parts is because 1, movement. You could look at all the scientific stuff of why moving your body first thing in the morning is so impactful. I'm not a scientist though, so I won't get into it. It's boring. But this could be like going for a quick walk. It could be doing, like 15 jumping jacks. It could be doing stretches, yoga, a quick 15-minute workout. So for my mornings, I always do 20 minutes of stretches because it just feels good.
Yeah.
And that's obviously like good to get your blood moving and whatnot.
Sure.
So any sort of movement, whatever that means to you. And then education, because we want to get, those juices flowing first thing in the morning. It gets our mind working. So read 10 pages in a book, listen to a podcast, watch a documentary, anything that just like you're learning something right off the bat in the morning. It could be something so small. Mindfulness, like you said, you write every day. That is huge. So mindfulness for me, I journal every single morning.
Yeah.
And I love journaling. It's like changed, not to be dramatic, but it's like changed my life. But
yeah, it does, and it lets you be honest about those things that you fear. It lets you be honest about that gap from the current state to the future state, and then that zone in the middle that you're talking about. It's like that's how a lot of times I can identify what I need to do. And a lot of times the stuff I write down right in here is what I end up doing for that day that actually moves the ball forward, and I feel like I'm moving it forward. Aside from that, a lot of the other stuff that I put in place, like if I'm not connected to it in the shorter term, it starts fading into that gray, and this gray starts to get bigger and bigger. And like you said, even with the morning routine, like it doesn't have to be that complicated, but I also notice too, like whenever I'm in that zone of like, oh shit, I got so much stuff to do. I just gotta go. I gotta get moving. I gotta go. And like 60% of that stuff, maybe more, is not actually important. Like you've kind of just made, like I make stuff up in my head of what I need to do. Otherwise I'm like, I need to redo my website. I'm like, I just got a lead for my website.
Right.
Like, and I'm also connecting with people in other ways. Like on LinkedIn, it's like, yes, spend an hour a week, like revamping some of this stuff. But like, if it doesn't go out by next week, it's not the world's not over. That's not the most important thing. But if I don't take care of like what my customers need, like that's something really important that I need to do. Like I got to edit this episode and I got to get it to them by today. Like, yeah, I've got to do that. That's something that people care about. That's something important. But like all this other shit, I think we make up so much stuff that's important. Like so as you're going through your day, you set it up with the morning routine, right? But like how do you figure out what's important? Like how do you prioritize stuff?
Yeah, you focus on what really matters and you focus on what moves the needle forward.
So how do you identify that? Like you personally, like how do you identify that stuff for you?
So besides my morning routine, because obviously that sets me up for like the day, but as far as like looking at the week ahead, looking at the month ahead, every single Sunday I do like a weekly like planning like in bulk every single Sunday, and it's like my favorite part of my Sundays. And I look at the week ahead and I'm time blocking my whole week. Time block, if you don't time blocking is going to become your best friend. It's like I cannot function without my time blocking now.
I started doing that after we talked like, I don't know, a month ago at this point, but I started putting some parameters in place. And, it has like a couple different benefits. One, if you're starting your Monday and you're like, oh my God, I have so much to do this week, it alleviates that stress because you can look at your calendar ahead and be like, I do have a lot to do, but I also have specific times for everything. So I know what by the time Friday night comes, it's going to be done. Yeah. And you can like take that deep breath. And I know what I'm going to be doing. Yeah. And part of that struggle is like figuring out like, what the fuck am I going to do like today? Like, oh my God, I got to do this, but then I should post on LinkedIn, and then maybe I should go do this. And then all of a sudden, like you're just looking at your LinkedIn feed or your Instagram feed. You're like, I didn't get anything done.
Yeah, because you didn't have a plan.
No.
And you have to. I mean, so what I do on Sundays is I'll time block, and how I time block is I write down so it goes need, want, and can. So I'll schedule all of my needs for the week, which are non-negotiable. So like appointments, doctor appointments like this, showing up and coming to do this podcast. And I have an appointment. It's a set time. If I have set client calls, I know that those are in there. They're scheduled. Those are like the non-negotiables. They've been scheduled. These are my needs. Sure. So then I have all those and I look at them on a weekly basis. So then I see where there's gaps in my day. And I'm like, okay, now I need to throw in my wants. So like for your example, I really want to update my website this week. So that would be a want. I can pick a day and a time slot to do that. I really want to batch all my content this week. Perfect. Put a time block in for that. I really want to take my dog to the park once this week. Okay, put time in for that. I really want to work out 4 times this week. Okay, time block that. And you just start to make these different lists of the needs, the wants, and then you look at your week in advance and you're like, okay, I totally have time for all of this. And if for some reason something takes longer, I've added like some like buffers, like I can move things around. I use my Google Calendar because you can move things, you can move it down, you can extend it. I'm like, I love this flexibility. And then your cans are like, if for some reason I'm like a superhuman this week and I get all the needs done, I get all the wants done, and I have some time, then you pull from your can list of like, I can go, I don't know, I can go visit my mom this week, or I can go out to dinner this week, or I can go happy hour. Like those are like if for some reason you don't get to them, the world's not going to end. It's going to be okay. But if I do have time, like I can do extra outreach on my Instagram this week, or I can do this. So like there's so many you have all these options. You know what needs to get done is going to get done. And it like forces your focus into those one thing. So if I'm like, okay, for the next 2 hours, I'm going to batch all my content. I'm putting all my distractions aside. I'm only doing that because I've time blocked it. Whereas how I used to do it, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go batch my content. Then I'd scroll on Instagram, and then I'd scroll on Facebook, and then I'd be like, oh, my client just messaged me. I better get back to them. And then 3 hours go by and nothing's done.
Yeah.
And like, that's going to kill your productivity. Trying to multitask, you can't do it anymore. I mean, I used to be like the crazy multitasker. I was like, I could do everything at once. No.
But then you realize that you're not actually multitasking. You're just getting nothing done.
Exactly. I mean, multitasking decreases your productivity by 40%. I'm
really?
Like, why didn't anybody tell me that? Like, I've been wasting all this time. But really, I mean, your brain is not meant to focus on more than one thing at a time. And even if you are doing 3 things, you're not giving it your all. It's not like quality work. You're just doing it to get it done. And so it takes way longer when you're doing it that way. So I would say like time blocking your week ahead, looking at like what needs to get done, finding time for it, and then like being really creative, and you get to make your week. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you really have control over your schedule. So you don't have to let your schedule control you anymore. If you set time ahead every Sunday or every Saturday and you just make this plan, yes, things are going to change and something might come up and you might have to move things around, but like that's okay. At least you're going in with a plan and it clears your head of like, okay, like this week is totally doable.
Yeah. Yeah. I've noticed as soon as I started planning some of this stuff out, it's alleviated it a lot. And then over the past 2 weeks, all of my plans have pretty much gone to shit. So now I have to go back this weekend. And that's part of, actually, I was planning on doing it this weekend of like, all right, let me actually schedule out let me look at what I'm doing for the next like month, 2 months, and kind of plan some of this stuff out. So when you're starting with people, you start with the mindset piece, and that almost seems like something you would do as a, like, ideal case would be like a ramp up to starting your business. Yeah. So after you go through the mindset piece, then where do you go next?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where they're at, right? If they have not even started their business, they're just in the idea phase, we're obviously going to take a different route than, hey, I started my business, but now I kind of want to be full-time in it. Like, that's a totally different direction. But it really comes down to, what do you want? Like, what is your end goal, right? What is the ultimate, if you're looking at like the biggest goal ever, what is that? And then breaking it down of, okay, how do we get there? Because so often we have these big goals and we just want to like sprint towards them, and we try everything, and then we're like, why didn't I get there? Well, it's because if you look at it as in, it's like a staircase, if you will. The top of the staircase is your end goal, and you're down here at the floor level, and you really want to get to the top. I mean, unless you have some like superhuman powers that I'm not aware of, there's no way you could go from floor to top level just by like leaping. You're going to like just somersault down the ground and crumble and just get all these bruises, and it's going to be bad. So you have to look at your goals the same way. You can't just jump from 0 to 10. So you can look at 10 and you can strive for 10. That needs to be like your like driving force. But there are steps that you need to take in order to get there. You can't go right to step 8. You can't go right to step 7. You have to start with step 1. So that's really like the approach that I would take is, okay, then you know where 10 is. What is the first step, right? And it's probably going to be a really small one, and people don't like that. People want the instant gratification.
Sure.
We're built up to want this instant gratification to, I want it and I want it now. And like when you're building a business, that's not it. It's not going to happen.
No. And I think part of it too is like, I think it's reality slapping you in the face. That's what happened to me. It's like, oh shit, this is way more work than I thought it was going to be. Because once you start breaking it down, then it's like, oh, this is real stuff that I have to do and I have to get done. Like, it's never, once you're doing it, it's never as bad as you think. But when you're looking at that full to-do list, once you've broken it out, it can be daunting.
Yeah.
But that was one of the big slaps in the face of like, well, I already jumped into this with both feet, so I'm here. So I really have no other option other than to just do this. But man, this is like a lot more work than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. I mean, well, you have a choice. You can either look at all of the things that you need to do, or you can look at, okay, I know I need to do this first. And then once you do that, you can, lift the Post-it. No, okay, what's under this one? Okay, I'm going to do this. And then you just do it literally one step at a time, because it becomes way less daunting when you're looking at something like just look at it through a tiny square lens. You just look at what you need to do first. And then once you do that, okay, it's over with. Now I can move on to the next one. And it's so much less overwhelming. I mean, like you said, building a business is hard and overwhelming because all of a sudden you have to start wearing all these hats.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't have room in my closet for all these hats. Like, how the hell am I going to do this? You really have to like strategically break it down in a way that is way more approachable than just being like, all right, I'm in here. You know, I just jumped head first in. Now I'm just going to do all the things. It might work like for the first couple months, but you are going to get so overwhelmed that you're just going to end up right back where you started.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that it really does seem like a way to kind of get past the like, oh, I'm not an entrepreneur, because I'm not like a typical entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Like I don't have like that like, we'll do it, we'll just get it done, like that kind of mindset. Like I'm like, yes, we'll get it done, but like you got all these like doubts and all this stuff. Like I don't know, it seems like this planning stuff really mitigates a lot. It does mitigate a lot of that, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, it's you taking back control, because all these external factors could continue to control you. Your mind could continue to control you, and all those doubts could come in, and all of like the, I don't want to do it, I'll do it later. Like all of that pours in, but it's like you have a choice, so you can take back control. You know, you can ramp up your self-discipline, you can ramp up your habits, and you can ramp up your why and remind yourself why you even started this shit show in the first place. And if you can be connected to your why, I mean, that is like the biggest thing that you can do. I mean, get so clear on why you're doing this. And even when you think you're clear on your why, like get even more clear, because when you're having those bad days, your why is going to get you through it. I always say like your why is obviously what gets you started, but your why is what keeps you going, right? Motivation comes from a motive. That means part of the word. So in order to have motivation, you have to have a motive behind it. It has to mean something to you. So your why is so important because it's going to remind you of why you did this in the first place.
So why do you do what you do?
Oh God, that's a long-winded answer. I mean, my why is very extensive. I mean, I practice what I preach, so my why is very clear. I mean, it really boils down to, I look at what I want my future to look like. I knew that I wanted to be able to be home with my future kids. Obviously, I don't have kids yet, but I know eventually, like I cannot wait to be a mom. I'm so excited to be a mom. And if I stayed in the corporate environment that I was in, I wouldn't be able to have that. And so now I'm building a business where I can work from wherever. I pick my hours. I still get to wake up and help people every day. And I know that down the road, by having this type of business and this type of structure, I'm going to be able to focus on what matters. I'm going to be able to have quality time with my family. I mean, that was like the long-winded why, but like in my like current situation, my why is when I was working in corporate, I live 45 minutes away from my mom, and spending time with her is so important. I only got to see her maybe like once every 2 months because I was so busy. The hours were insane. And by the time I would get home, the last thing I wanted to do was drive. I mean, I was so tired, and I like look back and I'm like, I'm not doing anything that matters to me. Like I'm too tired to go on date night with my boyfriend. I'm never seeing my mom. I'm never seeing my sister. I'm missing things with my friends. I'm missing holidays. So I'm like, I need to build a business that allows me to focus on what truly matters to me and what I value. And so now I can still wake up and work just as hard and make just as much money, if not more, and still get to be around the people I love and still get to do things that like mean something to me. Sure. So that's like the why that keeps me going, is like, I'm going to be able to have such a balance finally. And that's what means something to me.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
My wife's in the similar boat with a lot of that stuff, so I do understand it. One of the things, so for me, we could say we both came from enterprise. I think we kind of missed each other a little bit. I think I might have kind of been nearly on my way out when you were just starting out. Yeah. And we're just in different areas, but I'm glad I worked there, because the thing that I liked about being there was that it was the first place that really forced me to get past my own bullshit. Mm-hmm. Because while long-term for me, working somewhere that kind of treats you as a number and things like that doesn't really work for me. Yeah. But when I was 22, when I started there, 22 to 24, however long I worked there, that time was like critical, because you have to get past the matrix. Like, if you don't sell enough, if you don't have the right scores, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, you can't get promoted. So there's no like, well, I'll just like this, blah, blah, blah. And like, you can give it to me, right? And then they're like, no, fuck you.
Not how it
works. Yeah, it just doesn't work that way. So like for me, it was so important to go through that process. It was like very humbling.
Yeah.
And it made me realize that I wasn't special. So that way I could realize how I was special. And then I can go somewhere else and like bring that same work ethic. Right. So like, I'm glad I did it, but yeah, it was not going to work long term.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, that's the thing. Like, I'm so glad I worked there because obviously I learned so much and I grew so much, and it's helped me be a better business owner because of the things that I learned there.
Yeah.
But like you said, long term, that was not going to work for me. Like, my mental health was so negative. My physical health was deteriorating. Like, I was just not in a good place. But and I'm not going to blame it all on enterprise. Like, it partly is me because I have the mentality where, like, if I want something, I'm going relentlessly after it.
Yeah. And you convinced yourself that was what you wanted.
Yeah, and being in that environment where it's all about numbers and it's all about pressure and it's all about being the best of the best, mixing my personality with that type of environment was toxic because I wasn't going to stop. And I can see, like, if I were still there, I'm sure I'd be, like, way high up, but like at my own expense. And so like I had to realize that of like the way I am, like I'm so like, I'm blessed that I'm that like intrinsically motivated and I'm a go-getter, but that type of energy works way better for me when it's towards my own business because I get to make the rules. I set the boundaries. So it's way better received where I am now than where I was.
Sure. And plus when you are an employee for especially a company that's that size, they've got like a pretty rigid structure in place. So it's like, I got to bring my own thing to this. And it's like, well, you can't. And that is pretty stifling.
Yeah.
When you've got that mindset.
Yeah. I mean, when you have like a creative mind and when you're very like, I want to do things outside the norm, and they're like, nope, you have to stay in this box. Like, and I would still do things that like were outside the norm. And sometimes they would be like, okay, good job. And they're like, don't do that again. I'm like, but it worked. They're like, but that's not how we do it. I'm like, but it worked. It's like, it's so frustrating. So like now you're out of the box and now you can do your own thing and now you can try things out. And if it works, great, keep doing it. And if it doesn't, okay, revamp it and like change it around and hit the reset button. Like you're allowed to do that. And for me, I needed that. I needed to get out of the box.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I need to throw the box away.
that's kind of where I ended up there, and then the last place that I was at, it was starting to become more like a box. And I was like, all right, I gotta figure it out. I gotta figure it out.
Yeah.
Do you talk to people that are like I imagine that a decent amount of the people that you're talking to are like interested in starting their own business and XYZ. Do you talk to anybody that's similar to the way that you were a couple of years ago where it was like, no, like I'm fucking doing this and like blah, 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 full throttle. And it's like, it might be coming apart at the seams, even on the inside, but part of it is like I put so much time into this, I said, this is what I wanted. And like, I just don't want to let that go. Like for so long, I was like, I told myself like, I'm going to be in a band. Like I want to be in a band. Like I want to be a famous musician or at least like a professional musician, whatever it might be. And then I kind of got to a certain point where I was like, I don't really want that. Like I want to play music as much as possible. Like I don't necessarily want to be in like a band as like my main job. And like that was such a difficult thing to let go of because I had told myself that for so long. So like, I don't know, do you ever talk to people or do you feel like you're one of the only people that that is really like that you've come across? Like,
no, I mean, my favorite types of people to work with are people that were me like 2-3 years ago because like,
exactly what they're going through.
And I get it. And not everybody feels that way, but like, it's almost like a whole like grieving process. Like, it's a big loss because you have in your mind this picture of what you want your life to be and you like plan it. Like maybe you had a whole Pinterest board to go along with it. Like your life is planned out, what you want for your future is planned out, and then all of a sudden that's not it anymore. And like it's truly a grieving process. It's not losing somebody, but it's losing the idea of what your future was. And so it's
kind of like losing somebody. It's like a light version of it.
Yeah.
It's a future version of yourself that's dying, basically.
Yeah. And so like that's a whole process, and you really have to like give yourself time and like give yourself grace in that period because it's not easy. I mean, I know for me, like when I made that decision, it obviously was not an easy decision. I was like, why am I leaving something that I'm really good at and like that I can see myself like, you know, moving forward with? But it really goes back to, but what do you actually want? And is what you're doing right now going to get you there? And my answer obviously shortly was no. And so it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do about it? Because at that point, if you know so badly what you want, and if the direction you're going is going to bring you further away from it, you have to say no.
Yeah.
And it's like,
hard to see.
It's hard.
It's hard to accept. It's sometimes hard to see too. Like when you're in like the battle fog, the fog of war is really what it is.
Yeah.
It's like you just don't know where you're going sometimes.
Yeah. And I think it's even harder too when you do finally tell yourself like, I'm okay, like, no, I'm doing this. But then the people that you're surrounded with are not like on the same page. And that's really hard. A lot of people I work with, they're like, I'm ready, but like my husband doesn't support it, or like my mom doesn't support it, or like my friends are making fun of me. And like that makes it it's already hard enough, and that makes it so much harder because they're like, what the heck are you doing? Like, I don't understand it. And people that have never been in that position, people that don't have the same type of like goals that you do, they're not going to get it.
No.
And that's also a hard pill to swallow.
It's tough. It's the crazy part about that side of things too is that you're going to have so many people that either think you're crazy or say that you shouldn't do it or XYZ. But then once you actually do it, all of a sudden it goes from being like, oh, you shouldn't do that. And then it turns to, oh, you should do this or try this and this and this. And it like their mindset changes from like, don't do that. Because they're trying, a lot of times it's looking out for you, even if, I don't know, maybe it's like 70-30 looking out for you or jealous preventing you. That always is going to exist. But like coming up with a plan and actually going for it, it does change the people's mindsets around you. I've noticed that since I've started this.
100%. I mean, you are who you surround yourself with at the end of the day. So if you're surrounding yourself with people who are like lazy and like super like comfort zone and all they want to do is like nothing, then you're probably going to like morph into that. But if you're surrounding yourself with like people who are very motivated and they care about things that matter and like they're all about like being the best version of you and like getting better every single day, then you're slowly going to like turn into that person. Obviously you have to do your own work, but if you're surrounding yourself with a certain group of people, you'll notice that like the average of like the 5 or 6 people that you hang out with most, you're like a direct reflection of them. And that's why, I mean, that was hard for me too, because I had a lot of people that I hung out with that I was friends with, and I was like, they're not bringing out like good sides of me. And so that's a whole other, I mean, we could talk all about all the changes that happen when you go into like business ownership, but like that was a big one too, is your lifestyle changes and the people that you're surrounded with drastically changes. And that's hard too.
Yeah. Well, I don't see, this is the only thing that I like view differently is like most of my friends are like kind of white trash or some version of white trash. So it's like, but I'm not really white trash. So like, I don't know that I fully buy this theory, but I've heard it for a long time. Yeah. But I do know what you're saying.
Yeah, but
it's more different. A dig at my friends because, you know, they are borderline white trash. But
that's okay. But I'm sure they have really good qualities. And
no, they don't have any redeeming
they got nothing going for them. Well, then you're the oddball. You're the oddball.
Yeah, and I like to keep it that way. My friends are genuinely and generally pieces of shit, you know? So, like, they are who they are. Yeah. And then, you know, I'm friends with them pretty much out of, like, the good graces of my heart. And
you're like acting like it's charity work to hang out
it's pretty much charity work to hang out with my friends, especially my friend Bill Craig.
If you're
he's
listening,
a real
Bill.
piece of shit. And
Bill.
he really reduces chances of being the godfather of the daughter, you know.
Bill, you messed up.
You messed up, Bill.
Fucking Bill.
God damn it, Bill.
Does he listen? I hope he listens.
I'm going to send him to this.
Yeah, he definitely listens to this part.
Bill, I'm sending this to you. I hope you enjoy.
Cheers to Bill.
Cheers.
Thanks for being a shit show. Sorry, Bill. I don't know you. I don't know anything about you.
Don't apologize.
I trust Chris's judgment.
Yes. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Don't apologize to Bill. He doesn't deserve it. But so, okay, quick question. When you were going through this stuff of being one-track minded, and not realizing that, you know, like this isn't what you wanted to do, were you journaling at that time?
Yeah.
You were? Okay.
Yeah, I started journaling, I would say 4 months before I ended up leaving the corporate world. And
okay, but so all right, so you weren't doing this during the entirety of it. It was something that came to you shortly before you left.
Yes, it was all within. So I left corporate, I think April 2020, so like right when the pandemic was starting. But all of this like mindset stuff started, I would say, January, February-ish. So it was very, I mean, it shows because I did all that and then I was able to leave and then I launched my business end of August of 2020 or maybe beginning of September. So there was like a significant period before and then during and then after. But all the mindset stuff happened before. And that's kind of what, besides, COVID giving me the push, but that's kind of what gave me the push. And that's kind of where all like the realizations came through, especially in journaling. I mean, you learn a lot about yourself when you're journaling, even if it's just like a simple brain dump. I mean, brain dumps are my favorite, where you just like pen and paper and you just write. And like you could just write. You have no idea what's coming out. You're just like, I'm gonna keep writing. But like you uncover a lot, and that's when I kind of learned the most about myself. I did a lot of like value work and focusing on what you really value, which is a whole process. But I mean, to keep it short, by the end of doing the value work, I looked at all of my values and I looked at what I was doing. I was like, no wonder I'm not fulfilled, because what I'm doing is the complete opposite of my values.
Yeah.
So like that was like the missing piece. I was like, okay, now this is validating that like what I'm feeling is validated, because what I actually truly value, I'm not doing anything that has to do with it. So, and I was like, well, shit, now what? Now I know I can't be doing this and I shouldn't be doing this, but like, what do I do now? I'm going to leave and then I have to start my own business. What does that look like? So it's like, okay, a journal sesh. I probably still have these pages. I should look back. I was like, okay, what do I really like about what I currently do? What am I really good at? What is something that people really need? And so I'm sure you can figure out that was a very long journaling session, but
sure.
What it came down to is what I really love about what I do at my job was I loved being a mentor to people. I loved helping people get to where they wanted to be. I loved helping them reach new levels. We got praised for how many people we could get promoted under us. I mean, that wasn't the part I liked, but I loved being their mentor. I loved being the person that they would go to. Sure. And what I'm good at, I mean, obviously I'm really good at organization. I'm really good at business. I'm really good at, that list was all over the place of like, I'm really good at this. I'm really good at this. I really love this. And then what do people need? I was so deep in my mindset work at this time. I was like, people need mindset. That's all I wrote. And I was like, how do I fit these pieces together and start a business? And that was when I kind of got introduced into the coaching world, which allowed me to hit on all of those points in one. And I was like, this is where I'm going. And this is what makes sense for me, because it aligned with my values. It aligned with what I was good at, and it aligned with what people needed. So I was like, all right, I'm doing it. I'm going all in.
Nice. Okay. Cool. All right. So it was really so it started with that value work and understanding what's important. Yeah. And then you take a look at what you're really doing. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you realize like, wow, there's a huge gap here.
Big gap. I was like, whoa, this could not be any more opposite, because I was realizing like what I was motivated by in my work did not match up with what I was like actually motivated by. And I mean, I think that's the main difference too. When you're an employee, you're motivated by completely different things than when you're an entrepreneur. Like an employee is like motivated by like promotions and bonuses and money and paychecks. And they're so focused on like just the next 24 hours. And they're so focused on like counting down the days till Friday. And then an entrepreneur, like they're not focused on the next 24 hours. They're focused on the next 24 years. And that's where the focus lies. And they don't count down the days till Friday. Like you get to wake up and Friday's just another day to do like
shit, it's Friday.
It is Friday today. But it's just so different. Like I look back at like how crazy I thought I was in the moment and all the shit I went through and all the roller coaster, but I really wouldn't change any of it, because if I look at what my life would be like if I never did this, I don't know where I'd be right now.
Right.
And I'm like,
isn't it crazy?
It's so crazy to think about like where I was and where I would be if I continued on that path. Like I don't even want to think about that, because that's scary.
What made you take the leap to actually do it? Was there like a distinct moment in your mind?
A bottle of wine.
Really?
No, I'm just kidding. I mean,
fuck it.
If you get any advice from this podcast, it's have a bottle of wine and start a business.
Assess your values, journal, get drunk, and your dreams will come true.
The end. No, in all honesty, I mean, it was a lot of, I had all this downtime now, right? Because we're in a pandemic. I can't leave my house. I just left my job, and I'm like, oh, okay, what does this mean for me? This is kind of scary. What finally helped me make the leap was honestly knowing that knowing how badly I never want to go back, and being so attached to like what I really want. I was like, if I really want this, I have to take action. I have to do something, because it's one thing to say you want to do something and it's a totally different thing to actually do it. But I think, again, that whole fear thing, it was way scarier to me to think of what my life would be like if I stayed.
Yeah.
That's way scarier. To stay stuck and to stay in your comfort zone and to think about what your life is going to be like if you stay there. That's way scarier than thinking about like what's going to happen if I take a risk.
That's where I was at. That's why I left. I was like, man, like I feel like if I stay here, I'm going to want to kill myself. At some point, I'm just going to be like, fuck this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm done. Like,
it's scary. It's like, I mean, not to get like too into it, but like the last year that I was in corporate, I was in and out of the hospital 8 different times, all for different things. And it was because my mental health, my physical health, everything was taking a toll. And I'm like, if I continue down this path, it's not going to be 8 times. It's going to probably be 16 times. And I'm like, I'm just going to be so sick because I'm so tired and I'm so stressed. And I'm so burnt out. I'm not doing any of the things that make me happy. Like, that to me was scary enough to be like, get the hell out, go do your own thing, go start your own business. Like, if shit hits the fan, you will figure out. You have figured everything else out up until this point. Like, you can do this. You're totally capable of it. And like keeping that mentality and keeping that mindset is what helped me get to where I am. And honestly, like if I didn't do the mindset work, I'm being completely honest, I would not be sitting here. Like I would have already quit my business. I would have already like closed down. I would have been like, because I would have let all those fears and I would have let all that doubt and all of these like thoughts and stuff completely crumble me. And I literally would have quit by now if I didn't have like the mindset to back it. And I'm thankful that I did the work first, but I know that if I didn't do that, I would not still have a business.
Yeah. Well, and part of it too, like for the reason why I asked about the journaling is like, because it seems like it coincided, because once you start writing and these things start coming out of your head, you're like, oh shit, this is actually how I think. Like this is how I feel about this stuff. But like part of what I noticed too is that when when I'm not consistent with it, all that same old stuff comes back in. It like creeps back in. So like if I don't write for a few days or something like that, like all those same fears that I had before I started this come back in. Yeah. And they never go away. It's just always like a constantly tending to it. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. And when you journal, do you like follow like specific prompts or do you just pretty much free write?
For the most part, free write. Yeah. I did one. So there's something called the personal Credo journal. Yeah. And I did it for like almost 60 days. It's supposed to be 120 days. I just gave up on it. But those were prompts. And that was actually good. I feel like it's good to mix it up, you know? Because sometimes you want to just write down what you're thinking. Sometimes it's good to have somebody question what you think.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's good, like you said, to have a combination of the both, because depending on what type of day it is, you might need prompts to like get your mind going.
Get going.
Sometimes you don't need it. You're just like, I'm just going to write it all out. Yeah. And
what do you do?
I do a combination of both. So my morning routine, my journaling that I do in my morning routine is, I started with, what was it called? It was like a 5-minute journal or 6-minute journal. That's where I started, because like when you're starting to journal, you kind of need help because it's very new territory. But now I kind of do my own thing, and in the morning I'll write down, let me think, 3 things I'm grateful for. I'll write down what my main intention is for the day. I'll write down like, how do I want to feel today? So when I wake up, I'm like, how do I want to feel today? Do I want to feel productive? Do I want to feel like energized? Do I want to feel this? And then I write down an affirmation. Those are like crazy when it comes to like things actually happening. I mean, it's insane. And then I write down, my favorite one is send love to. So in the morning, I pick one person or 2 people that I want to reach out to that day, of like send like a quick like voice note, like, hey, I'm thinking of you, like, how are you doing? Or like, hey, like, love you, just letting you know. Like, I really like to do that in the morning. I'll write down my top 5. So my top 5 things, like if for some reason shit hits the fan and absolutely nothing gets done today, as long as these 5 things get done, like I'll feel like it was a good day. And let's see, what else do I write in the morning? I write down what I'm looking forward to most, and I'll write down my movement. So like, how am I moving my body today? Am I doing stretches, a walk, and a workout?
Sure.
Am I just doing stretches? So like that, I like doing like the prompts in the morning because it kind of sets the tone for the day. You kind of have an idea of like what the day is going to look like. And then at nighttime is when I'm doing like the free write, like the brain dump, because I don't know if you're like me, but when my head hits the pillow at night, it's like, let's think about this and this and this and this and this. And I'm like, I just want to go to bed. So I found that doing like the brain dump right before bed, it kind of alleviates that like squirrel brain from happening, where you get it all out and then you lay in your pillow and you're like, I have nothing left to think about because I just wrote it all out. It helps me sleep. I am awful at falling asleep. So that's something that's helped me. But I like doing like a combination of both.
Yeah. Nice.
It's definitely helpful.
So you've got these pieces. Is there any other piece to the process that you go through, or is that more once you actually get into working with them, then it kind of flows to wherever it needs to flow to? Yeah.
So when I'm working with someone in private coaching, which is more like business focused, obviously the first portion of that is mindset. Like I would say like the first 2 weeks are very mindset focused, but then we get to go into like the fun part of like the business and the planning and the strategies and the structure, and that's really where like the magic, if you will, if the magic happens, where the business starts to come to life and the ideas start flowing and the strategy is finally implemented. That way, like you can feel good moving forward with it, and it's not just some like chaos mess of an idea in your head.
Sure. Okay, cool. So I guess as we're kind of coming to the tail end of this, is there anything that you have that you want to give people as like a takeaway?
Oh gosh, let me just open up my advice book. I mean, as a takeaway, like if you are trying to start your business, I think just remind yourself that failure is inevitable. And so the fear of failure shouldn't be as daunting as you're making it, because you are going to fail. I mean, whether it's a small failure or a big failure, I mean, I wish there was a different word for failure because I hate that word, but you are going to slip up. It's going to happen. I mean, anybody that you look up to, anybody that's where you like want to be, they didn't get there by having 100% perfect days every day.
Sure.
Like, you are going to mess up, but like the beauty of that is that you learn the most about yourself when you do fail. And it makes you a better business owner because you make better decisions of it. So like, if anything, start embracing like the failure. Like if you mess up, like just celebrate it. Be like, woohoo, I messed up. What did I learn? And like, how can I be better of it? But because of it. And like, that was a big shift for me, is in the beginning, you just feel like nothing's working because you're trying all these things and you're like, wow, like nothing's working. And it's frustrating because you have these big ideas and you know it's going to be amazing, but you have to like remind yourself that every single failure, every single mess up is getting you closer to that success. And like, you can't have success without failure. So that was like my biggest takeaway when I was in those like early stages of entrepreneurship, of like, it's just getting me one step closer. It's just getting me one step closer. And like, thank God I had all those mess ups because I learned a lot. And now I've built a very sustainable business full time that's going to be long term because I was able to learn those things early on.
Yeah. Nice. Cool. Agreed. Yeah. I've learned quite a bit from messing up.
Yeah.
Those have probably been my most valuable lessons.
Yeah, it's very humbling, but it's like I kind of needed that.
Yeah,
I needed to learn that.
Agreed. I needed that smack in the face.
Yeah, needed it. It's
so,
okay, though.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, I would say the best place to find me is my business Instagram page. I'm on there pretty much every single day, and I love to. If you can't tell, I love to talk. So I'd love to talk to people on Instagram. It's at Meg Woodell, and you know my DMs are always open. You can find a lot of like free resources there too. But if you are on Instagram, my website is mindsetinthemaking.co, C-O, not com.
Cool.
.com was taken.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming and doing this. I appreciate it. This was awesome.
Yeah, I love talking about this stuff, so I appreciate you having me.
Sweet. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Have a good one.
Cut.
Nice.
Awesome. Ooh, how long was that?